One of the biggest problems that I faced when I first started my agency was being able to keep track of the people that I'm in contact with. It was easy in that I didn't have many calls when first starting, so I knew that I had to follow up with John on Monday and Susan on Wednesday, and then that was it. But as I started to go through and do more on the front end, it got incredibly messy. I didn't know who I was in active conversations with to actually book calls and follow up with them. And also, I stopped following up or knowing who I was supposed to follow up with on the back end after we had a call. So, this is pretty much what a lot of people end up running. You'll have something similar to this, where you have the pre call. So, this is where you're going through and doing outreach. Whatever platform it is, I've just put social media and then doing DMs because that could be the most awkward to go through and use. With platforms like Instantly, where you could go through and do cold outreach, it does become a bit easier because it's built specifically in order for you to make money and actually follow up with contacts. But social media isn't. It's there to be social, just to go through and have a place where you can go through and send messages. So it's not set up in a way that, hey, you need to go through and follow up with this person on this day. So it can get very, very messy. But of course, we want to be able to go through and use this as much as we can so that people know about us. If we are not going to go through and message people, there is no way that they're going to know what it is that we offer. But this is where we can then have and push them to get them to book a call. We then have a pre-call email sequence, which is very easy to automate. So we don't need to worry about this. Automations handle it. And it's either that they're going to show, which is of course what we want, or no show, which is what we don't want. If it's no show, then it's also very easy for us to go through and put a no show follow-up sequence, which also is automated, and we can then push them back to booking a call. If they show, then ideally we want to win, because then at that point we've sold them and we can actually start to go through and onboard them. That's great. That's not always going to happen. There are going to be some people who you would be able to reschedule on a follow-up call, maybe the following week or a couple of days later, in which that's perfect. Either one of those two are going to be the outcomes. That's what you want to go through and push for. However, there's also going to be a side where you go, hey, let's go through and schedule a call next week. And I go, I'm a bit busy. I am interested, but I need to get a few things in order on my side. Follow up with me in a month. And then we want to make sure that we go through and set that so that we can follow up. This is where you can still go through and get some very, very good deals. These are going to be clients that people, like, you can still work with them. It's just that there's other things going on. And there's always going to be the case. And not everyone's going to be absolutely amazing at sales that they can go through and turn every maybe into a yes. So we want to make sure that we are able to go through and log this and then go through and follow up. But between the two of these, so our pre-call and our post-call, it can get messy. It gets messy because you think that you could just put it all into one system, or at least I did when I first began. Wouldn't recommend. Suddenly you get loads and loads of contacts of every single person that you're messaging, but only a percentage of those will actually go through and book a call. And then you're putting in those post-call follow-ups also within the exact same system. Gets incredibly messy. So I'm going to run through exactly how I go through and run this. The first thing, let's focus on our pre-call first, because this is how we can actually get people to know about us, and this is how we can go through and get people to actually to book. If we can't get them to book, we can't even go through and actually highlight our offer to actually go through and sell. So let's get this cleaned up first. So the way in which I do this, I use ClickUp. You can go through it and use any project management platform. There are some platforms where you would need to go through and pay in order to just automatically track it. For example, for a time, I used a platform called Condo, which would then track DMs within LinkedIn. But you're then paying a subscription for that specific tool only to then go through and use it within LinkedIn. This is way cheaper and for me, much, much easier. You would need to go through and set up a few automations in a few different things, and I'll highlight that a bit later. But with this is what I've just duplicated for LinkedIn. This isn't my actual LinkedIn board because there's no one here. But I've duplicated this just so that we don't have to spend a ton of time blurring all the information. But these are the statuses. So we got this on a Kanban board with the statuses of new lead, waiting for response, active conversation, call offered, call booked, follow up later, no reply, not interested, unqualified. And then we have complete, but we never use complete. We only use what's actually over on here. Now, with this is the various different statuses that we would have. Now, how this works, high level, whenever we have a new contact, meaning someone sent us a connection request and we think that they align with our service, they are our ICP, we accept, we add them to this. If we send out connection requests and they accept, we add them to this. That can get a bit messy on some platforms. For example, LinkedIn, if you just send a connection request where without a note and someone accepts that, it doesn't add that as like a message. It doesn't do anything. You would need to either manually go through to check your most recent connection request, or what I do is I actually use Expandy and I just trigger a webhook. So whenever someone accepts my connection request, it triggers a webhook and automatically adds them to this, pulling their name and also their profile URL. So with this, everyone else, we could just go through and manually add. So I'm just going to show the manually add side. We have a form, and then of course we could go through and add a name. So I'm just going to go through and add myself, and then I'll go through and take my URL. The reason that we go through and take the URL on any type of social media platform is because it's going to be unique to that person. This would then add them as a new lead. So we can now see over on here, URL, LinkedIn, name, all set there, that I can now click that, go over to their profile and message. But we've also set this over on here. On ClickUp, just to go back, this board is set and displayed as a view for statuses. So we can see each status every single day. Log in, we can go through and focus on the people who are closest to like the call offered to actually get them to like go across, rather than those who are new leads. New leads, we will, of course, will go through and contact. But over on here, we can actually go through and change this grouping to be next follow-up date, which is just a custom field. And I put the custom field on here. And then when we go through and create a new task, we always set the next follow-up date to be today. Like we have to follow up today. But with this group, we have next follow-up date, which is then ascending, and it's just going to show every single day of when we need to go through and follow up with people. So as you start to go through and build this up, all you need to do simply is check this daily, see who you need to follow up with, go through, click their profile, click the message icon, see the previous messages, read them, message. That's it. Very, very simple. And then it makes life a lot easier that you can then go through and delegate this to someone else to go through and handle. There are some parts of this where you could go through and use AI. I know there's a lot of people doing that. I still like to go through and do it. It's just very, very simple to go through and keep on track rather than just, AI run it. I don't trust it 100%. AI is amazing. I don't trust it 100%, or at least I haven't figured out how to go through and run it without there being a few issues. So this is how we end up going through and running it. And then you can, of course, go through and build it out. When we message them, we then go through and move them to waiting for a response. We would then also update the day. So then, of course, we could go through and move it to tomorrow if need be. And that's going to push it back within our board. If they don't reply, we'll follow up a few times. If they do reply, then we move this into active conversation, because then we're actually having some back and forth. It's not that we've just, messaged and, we keep on sending messages to them. And we do want to separate of those who are, waiting for a response because we keep on sending messages, but they haven't replied yet, compared to those who are active conversation, because there is something there. So we focus on those with active conversations. And then from there, we have our structure, which is then we're going to have some back and forth, going to have some questions, see what their answers are, see if we can actually go for and help. And then we go for and offer a call. And ideally, it's going to be call booked. If there is anything that they say, hey, like I'm really interested, but now's not a good time. We're actually moving a few things about, but I think we'll turn on lead gen within like 2 months. Then, of course, we could do follow up later. And then, of course, we can start to go through and push like 2 months from now that it's going to be set. By the time that time comes around, of course, it will be set over and then it will actually come through. So all of this is here. That everything that we can be able to go through and track is all now within our next follow-up dates. So this is how we would go through and handle our pre-call. So then, of course, we can go through and push people over to our call booked. On the back end, so once all of this has happened and then we need our post-call follow-up, we actually have a very, very similar system. This is it. Yeah, again, I've duplicated it just because I don't want to go through and blur out every client I currently have, every person that I need to follow up with who could be a potential client. And this one's slightly different. There isn't a form for us to manually fill in. You could go through and set this. I have mine set to GoHighLevel. And the reason that I move it from GoHighLevel to ClickUp is because I hate GoHighLevel's task system to actually follow up. And we have to build more complex automations just to get that running compared to what we could just go through and do here. GoHighLevel, currently at the time of recording this video, it does say that it has the something's coming soon where you can have different views, and then of course you can track opportunities and put dates on them. but that's been coming soon for about 2 years. So I'm not waiting for it. What I like to go through and do is I have my GoHighLevel pipeline. And when someone says, hey, look, I'm interested, but like, can we, do something in like a few weeks? And I say, hey, how about we go through and schedule a call for that time? I go, oh, like, let's just follow up with me and I'll go through and let you know. That's going to happen, not every single time, but there's going to be times when people go through and do that. And there is going to be a percentage of those who just aren't interested, and you follow up and you don't get a response. But we still want to be able to go through and follow up with them, because there will be a percentage of those who do and actually do follow through. So how I go from run this is on GoHighLevel, I set the date in which they say that they're, open to potentially being going through and doing this. That could be a few days, few weeks, few months from now. And then from there, I will drag and drop them over to a different stage, which will trigger an automation, which will add the details in here. So for this one, I'm just going to go through and manually add my name. But you'll be able to go through and see that on the custom fields that are set on here, that we will have our email, follow-up count, follow-up type, GoHighLevel ID, next follow-up day, and then also the sales call log. So this actually brings in a bit more information. It's a very, very simple automation. I just run it through Make. So GoHighLevel triggers the automation. That then triggers a webhook. That goes over to Make. Make then goes through, creates our ClickUp task. So all of this would then be set within here. I also, just to go back, if there is a point of where we did not win and we actually lost them and they said, actually, this isn't for me, like I'm not interested, we would still follow up, but we would follow up in like 6 months from that point, rather than it being, within a couple days, weeks, or months. But this would do the exact same thing. So we're now here. There would be more information filled, but this would then be waiting for a follow-up date. Once that date hits, then of course, that's when we would go through and follow up. That's when we would go through and take a look at the sales call log. The sales call log, by the way, we just go through and get the transcript from Fireflies. And then in this case, it just adds the URL. So it'll just add the URLs to our previous calls that we've had. And that could be multiple calls. So then we can follow up with something custom like, hey, last time we spoke, you was actually moving house. And I know it wasn't a good time, but I hope the move has gone well. Are you ready to go through and pick this up? And at that point, we are now having something which is personalized directly to them. And on top of that, we are able to keep track of absolutely everything. It took me a while, even though this is very simple. I was very stupid to not go through and figure this out. I said I tried to put everything into one place. I tried using so many different types of softwares. I've done Condo. I've done other things as well to be able to go through and track it. There's some weird stuff that I did, like even on like LinkedIn, I tried to like do it all within Sales Navigator, which was bloody stupid to try and go through and do. So it took a long time for me to go through and do this, but it's actually very simple that as long as you just go through and set up an automation to go through and push the post call follow-up and then manually do it. This doesn't need to be you, that you set the rules, what your team needs to go through and do to make sure that they are tracking each and every single conversation. It then becomes way easier to stay on top, because all you need to go through and do is log in, and then you'll be able to see that each and every single person is here. Like we're able to go through and see what they need to follow up with, what the previous conversations were, what we needed to go through and see. So it's all here. This person, we need to follow up today. This person, we need to go through and follow up today. This person, we need to go through and follow up tomorrow. We can start getting those messages sorted by going through and putting it within the task itself. It is much, much clearer. Now that you have the follow-up system in place, you don't need to worry about losing leads. And it means that you can actually start to build beyond this by creating a funnel that will actually convert, in which I highly recommend watching this video right here. This video will give you the full breakdown. I hope you enjoy.